Good morning, Trump's family. Welcome back to my channel. Have a nice month, everyone, and God bless you. Alright, without further ado, let's get into the news this Thursday morning. Woke Disney has completely folded. They have unconditionally surrendered as Ron DeSantis has completely crushed all of their woke efforts. We're going to take a look at how Republican supermajorities across the country are ending wokeness like never before, and we're going to see what it all means for the future of our nation. You are not going to want to miss this. As disappointing as the last midterms were, one of the most astonishing developments to come out of those elections was the rise of Republican supermajorities in red states across the country. Now, a supermajority simply refers to legislators that have veto-proof majorities or generally 2/3 of the state House or Senate. And they represent really nothing short of the political dominance of a particular political party over a state, and so more Republican supermajorities in ever either formed or expanded last midterms. One of my favorite examples of this is Kentucky, that houses for dominance as of last midterms. Republicans now dominate 80% of the Kentucky's legislature. I mean, they literally hold 80 of Kentucky's 100 House seats. Democrats are basically and mercifully going extinct in Kentucky. So with this massive dominance in so many red states, we're beginning to see legislation that's doing nothing less than utterly crushing the woke left. Let's start with what's going on in the amazing state of Florida. Now, as you all know, the Republicans slaughtered the Democrats throughout the Sunshine State and last midterms. They amassed a supermajority in both the House and the Senate. And that involved a massive sea change in Miami-Dade County, which was one of the bluest of blue counties in the nation. Get this, all 9 of Miami Republicans running in Miami area state races, all 9 won in November. All right. This is Miami-Dade. This is unthinkable. It turned red. It was an absolute blowout. In fact, for the very first time since Reconstruction, there will not be a single Democrat holding statewide office in the state of Florida. They're gone. They've been consigned to a total and complete wipeout, and now the woke are beginning to reap the whirlwind. The red state whirlwind. Yesterday, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a bill officially ending Disney's governing autonomy in the state of Florida. Just weeks after it was revealed that Disney was pushing a radical LGBT agenda as part of their organized opposition against the parental rights bill that was signed into law by Governor Ron DeSantis. The Florida Senate overwhelmingly passed a bill that officially strips Disney of its self-governing power and special exempt status. You may not have known this, I certainly didn't. But for the last 50 years, Florida Disney has had a special self-governing status that allowed it to act relatively autonomously from Florida state law. I found this out firsthand. We had a Totally Talks company meeting down in Orlando back during COVID. A couple years back, precisely because Florida was free, while so many other states were enslaved to mask mandates. That's why we picked Orlando. So we went to Disney in a Disney park. And we were stopped by the hostess in the restaurant because we didn't have masks. Disney was enforcing basically California's mask mandate, the draconian mask mandate in the middle of Florida. And when I asked the hostess how the hell she could do that, she said that Disney operate with their own autonomous laws, they don't have to comply with the laws of Florida. Well, as of yesterday, that just got shoved up their butts. Quote, today, the corporate kingdom finally comes to an end. There's a new sheriff in town and accountability will be the order of the day. Okay, folks. So after having gone completely and totally woke, Disney now has officially lost that self-governing status after 50 years, though now live under the same laws as everyone else in the wonderful state of Florida, and they will be forced to pay up their debts and their fair share of taxes. But it's not just Florida. Over in Arkansas, Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders has signed a bill that will restrict what they're calling adult-oriented performances in her state. It's a bill that originally took aim to reclassify drag shows to be in the same category as adult strip clubs and theaters. Under the new law, adult performances are now banned from public property or being funded in whole or in part with public funds. And the law, of course, strikes any admittance of minors to be participating in attending the adult shows. The state of Arkansas brought a decisive end to the so-called kid drag shows that had been shamelessly performed around our country of light. In a comparable move, the deep state red state of Oklahoma has banning sex change operations for anyone under the age of 18. Everyone listen to this, quote, we must protect our most vulnerable, our children. After all, minors can't vote, can't purchase alcohol, can't purchase cigarettes. We shouldn't allow a minor to get a permanent gender-altering surgery in Oklahoma. Why I'm calling the legislature. Okay, that was Governor Kevin. But all of this, gang, is just the tip of the iceberg. The fact is that red states are banning wokeness all over the place. And this has extraordinary ramifications for the future of our nation. Right now, the rise of Republican supermajorities and the banning of all things woke has huge ramifications for the future of what are called sanctuary states. Now, of course, sanctuary states are sanctuary cities, they're generally associated with left-wing causes such as immigration or abortion. But right now on the right, sanctuary states are deep red states that are committed to protecting their citizens from any and all Democrat programs and persecutions coming from Washington, D.C. are manifest in all things woke. More and more red states have been joining together and in effect, forming an administrative and legal wall against the assault on our civil liberties by the blundering Biden administration. This is just an expanded version of what we've seen in the rise of what are called Second Amendment sanctuaries. As it today, more than 1,200 jurisdictions and 37 states have adopted resolutions that have made their jurisdictions official Second Amendment sanctuary. This is the idea of the sanctuary state from the vantage point of the right, the patriot right, red states banding together to create administrative and legal walls that protect their citizens from the oppressive woke excesses and abuses coming out of DC. We, of course, saw that with people like Ron DeSantis, standing up to the vax mandates and lockdowns. We've seen it from the Texas Attorney General's office pushing back against deep state social media censorship attempts. Texas now has a law that makes it illegal for big tech companies to censor the free political speech of Texas citizens. In fact, as I understand that applies now to anyone who's been censored, even if you're not in Texas, because that censorship has the potential of affecting Texas social media users if your channel's being suspended. Texans can access that channel and are therefore cannot access that channel and therefore are affected by these censorship practices. So these supermajorities mean that red states can increasingly set their own political agendas regardless of what DC wants or says or regardless of what the woke are trying to do. Democrat attempts to obstruct state efforts are immediately thwarted with these massive majority. So there you go. A day is that the woke left are indeed coming to an end in significant parts of our nation, where more and more reasons are making it absolutely clear here in our state, you go woke, you go broke. And some significant news. When's the last time the American map chain? A quick Google search says last major international change was the acquisition in 1904. And the return to Panama in 1979 of the Panama Canal Zone, an unincorporated U.S. territory which controlled the Panama Canal. Now I'm no historian and certainly no geography expert. So I really don't know if that's the correct answer. There's a visual representation video from Inside Your Business on YouTube titled How the US Map Has Changed in 200 Years. That video seems to indicate, at least in terms of the mainland state structure, that nothing has changed since the early 1900s. But I think moving forward in the next couple of years that visual representation might need an edit, it might need an update. We've been following this story for a while. It started off as a secession pipe dream, but it's very quickly turning into a possible reality here as multiple counties. In fact, a good chunk of them in the state of leftist dystopia Portland have expressed their will to secede from the state of Oregon and subsequently be absorbed by the state of Idaho, and it's actually happening. Legislation is being pushed and votes are being passed. This right here is probably one of the craziest stories that nobody seems to be talking about. Let's take a look. Alright, folks. Take a look at this beautiful headline right over here. Greater Idaho movement to make several Oregon counties part of Idaho gained steam. The most recent and most significant update from Oregonian politics. Greater Idaho resolution passes. Idaho House now calls for talks with Oregon over moving the border. With a wink and a smirk, the Idaho House of Representatives on Wednesday passed a non-binding memorial calling for formal talks between the Idaho and Oregon legislatures to discuss moving some rural Oregon counties out of their state and into Idaho. The proposal is rooted in the so-called Greater Idaho movement, seeks to include about 11 counties or 63% of Oregon's landmass within Idaho's borders. Because proponents of the plan think Eastern Oregon is more politically and culturally aligned with Idaho than Oregon's larger progressive cities in the western part of the state. Such a large-scale change to the state borders has occurred since the Civil War, and moving the borders would require the Idaho legislature, the Oregon legislature and Congress to all sign off in favor of the change. The move would also likely require multiple amendments. The Idaho Constitution, which defines the state's borders and caps the number of state legislative districts at 35. Now, I'm not going to present this video as if this is 100% going to happen. The chances still are pretty slim, despite the political will just based off the dynamic of politicians being politicians. Clearly, the people living in these 11 counties no longer want to be part of Oregon and would rather be absorbed by their neighboring states. But of course, as we know, the way politicians view it, political will show political bill. It's hard to say whether state legislatures in Congress would actually respect the democratic will of those voters. I'm inclined to believe that their democratic will most likely be ignored. But at the same time, you really never know. A vote start to take place. And you see that overwhelmingly their will is to secede, then clearly the next step from politicians should be to sign off on that will and to greenlight the project. And so I guess we'll have to see what happens with that. But the interesting element and the reason I'm not doubting this project is because I didn't think we'd get here to begin with. This whole thing started as an activist project. I keep describing it as a pipe dream. It really started off, I guess, as an unrealistic vision. And it's turned into something very real, an actual piece of legislation, and good, because what we're seeing is democracy in action. It's those silent, unheard voices, rural communities whose issues are largely ignored by elitist city-dwelling Democrats. That's really the crux of the issue. Alright, folks, hopefully you enjoyed the situation update today. Please let me know in the comments. Please do everything you can to